only had me down for half an hour, so I thought, oh, I'm going to really gallop through this one. But in fact, it was a typo, and I've got an hour. So we'll still have to do a bit of a slow canter, because ordinarily, I would do a workshop like this with about a third of the amount of people here, and do it as an interactive, hands-on kind of affair. So I'm going to do the best I can to get you through the programme that I've got planned. There's quite a lot to get through. I want to give you a context first, so I want to put the CV, the writing the CV forms part of the whole career planning programme, planning process, and then look at what the employer wants, so that then you can construct an effective CV, and then show you the different types of CV. So I've given you 2 types of CV. I'll talk about a third one as well during this talk. And then how to write your covering letter. And then if we've got time, we'll do questions. And I'll walk you through some of the resources I've given you. But I am going to be around here, and I'll be here till 5:30. So if you've got any questions afterwards, then you can come and contact me. Okay, so the career planning process, this is a very much simplified version of a model, or models that people use for career planning. So there's four areas. There's the self-awareness, knowing yourself and understanding the kind of person that you are. Opportunities, which kind of includes jobs and networking, and then taking decisions and taking action, and then here you've got these CVs, which, usually it is these 2 areas that receive the most attention, and we are doing a lot of this today. So you're hearing from people face to face, you're doing research on the job market today. There are various other ways of doing this, but today it's very much a networking session, which is a great way to find out about jobs. And then we're going to look at the CVs, not the interviews, but this is the whole transition. So how do you actually get your next job? You don't always need to use a CV, but even if you've been volunteering for somebody, even if you want to work shadow or just get in touch with somebody, it's kind of your calling card. So it's quite useful to have your CV up to date and ready to go. So how many people here have got their CV at least written, even if they're not that happy with it? Does anyone here made a start on their CV? Brilliant. How many people are happy the way their CV is right now? Feel that that is the perfect CV for them? Yeah? That's good. Confident, yes. I noticed a lot of them are the ambassadors over there. Okay. So, let's have a look at the types of jobs. We've actually covered quite a good range of them today. So, academic research, you've heard from Nigel Paul, and you've also heard from Helen on different types of research that you can do in a research institute like CEH or in a university. Research and industry, you can get into environmental consultancy work. There's a whole range of jobs within the environmental sector. And also, we've talked about policy as well, because a lot of the research skills that you have can be translated into other areas, so research for the media, research for policy. So, think about the transferability of these great skills that you're acquiring. Scientific services, so if you want to be more in an advisory role, again, that comes back to you and your personality and the kind of skills you prefer to use. Communications. So there's a whole range of science communication jobs out there. This building is full of science communicators. Learning societies are packed full of them, and a lot of people have come obviously from a degree background. They might have a master's, they might have a PhD. There are a lot of bioscientists who work with the British Ecological Society, the Society of Biology, the Society for Experimental Biology, which is my society. There's the Biochemical Society. We've got the Society for General Microbiology coming soon. And we do all these kinds of things, but obviously there's lots and lots of other organisations that do it too. Teaching is a form of communication, but obviously very different. Universities are very different to schools as well. You can do administrative development work. Self-employment usually comes when you've had a bit of experience, when you've got expertise that you can farm out, and people will be willing to pay for your expertise. So you might find people who've done a PhD or worked in industry for a long time, they take their skills, they take their contacts and networks, and they become self-employed. Or you might want to do something completely different. Some people even end up finding that a hobby that they are doing becomes their career. So, there's a whole range of different jobs. And depending on the job will depend on how you pitch your CV. So what do employers actually want? And it very much depends on the job. So if you're looking to do an academic research job, you have to think, well, what do those professors, what are they looking for? They're academics. They're very centred on specific knowledge, specific academic knowledge. They'll want to know about your exam results and things like that. And very specific research skills or technical skills that you have that you can convert and use in their lab or in the field with them. So then you've got, moving further away from your subject-specific knowledge, it's something that's subject-related. So this could be an ecology job, where they do want your subject knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily have to be really truly as specific as it would be for, say, going for a PhD, or if you had a PhD going for a postdoctoral position. And Nigel Paul, I think, spoke about that. He said if you want to do academic research, you need to want to really drill down into a particular area. So that's reflected in what that employer is looking for. And then you've got non-subject related, so something like general management or administration. Really, they just want somebody with a degree. So whether you've got an ecology degree or a marketing degree or a physics degree, but they'll be looking for general skills. So a lot of companies that you see that come to campus are actually looking for degree qualified people with good potential for management. And they tend to really dominate the campus. And that's usually because they want very generic skills and they want a lot of people. You won't find people looking for ecologists coming to the university, because they don't really need to. You will come to them, they don't need to go to you. So you won't find those kind of people at your university. The other thing to say that if you are thinking of changing fields completely, and some of you might be, just because you've done an ecology degree, it doesn't mean to say you have to be an ecologist. But what they might need is specific knowledge and specific skills in their field. And if that's the case, then when you're looking at your employability and you're looking at enhancing your skills, you might decide to do your voluntary work or take a specialist skill or course in some other area. So that's very sort of employer related. So that's what the employers want. And they're kind of in the driving seat, I suppose. It depends. If you've got a very specialist niche skill that the employers are after, then you could be in a buyer's market. So they're all after you. But invariably, they will have the upper hand. So we have to pander to what they want rather than the other way around. So we have to pitch ourselves to what they want. So I thought I'd just show you some job descriptions to show you how employers describe their jobs in different ways. So maybe some of you have already been doing this, looking through jobs.ac.uk or find a PhD, and you'll see that this is the very standardised format. You'll come across this a lot. So what is the PhD project about? This is the specific knowledge that the academic is looking for to fit in with their research project. And then, so what do they want? And they want specialisation. They want a relevant, good academic background and highly motivated with excellent laboratory or field skills. This one's saying that graduates with a master's degree are particularly welcome, but again, that's not always necessary. In fact, in most cases, they don't ask for a master's degree. So you can see how that then means that you would have to tailor your CV and change it to really highlight these key things that they're asking for, because they wouldn't have put them up there if they weren't the key things that they wanted. Okay. So then, temporary assistant ecologist. So I saw this on a website. So they want an appropriate degree qualification, experience of ecological survey and mitigation, field work, identification, experience of carrying out back surveys, so that's very specific about skills. A lot of them ask for a full driving licence, and then you can see this having to work evenings and weekends, but then again PhD students have to do that as well. So you can see that the emphasis has changed for this one. And so you reorganise your information towards that particular job. And then I'm going to show you this one, which I got off the internet. This is where you wouldn't need to have a specific ecology qualification. The European Union Civil Service looks for people with a degree, but then it just lists all these transferable skills that you need to demonstrate to them that you have the potential to go and work and do that kind of work. So sort of analytical skills, learning, prioritising, organisation, resilience. You have to show that through your degree and through your volunteer work, through the courses you've done and so on, that's evidence of being able to do this. Okay, so that could be a physics or a maths student could apply for that job, or marketing, music, whatever. So you would have to stand out from the crowd, something like that. Okay. So, just to recap about employers, it's a risky business, hiring. They want to get it right. It takes them ages to write the job description and the job requirements. And then they've got to pay a lot of the time to actually advertise these jobs. So they want a good return. They want lots of good applications from which they can then bring people in for interview. So the worst thing that can happen is that they can see that certain people might have potential. They really haven't presented themselves well enough on a CV that makes them feel enthusiastic that that person's really trying. For all they know, they're just rattling out CVs left, right and centre, not really caring where they land. And if you can show in your CV that you've really tried hard to match up you with them, then they feel that, they're halfway there, and they may get someone who's going to be quite good for the job. And the last thing they want is to hire somebody who, after 6 months, they feel, you're going to have to get rid of this person. It's a very stressful situation all round. So if you can put in the work, like they put in the work to work out what they want, then you should get some good results. So if I just summarise that, if you look at the skills versus knowledge, a PhD is really the most specialist thing you can do with your degrees, to then continue and do a PhD on a very specific area, so you drill down as opposed to across. And as you come out of academic research and you go towards subject related and then non-subject related, so what you have as you move away from PhD level is an increasing need for transferable skills and general knowledge, and then a decreasing need for specific subject knowledge and skills, and then vice versa. So this is how you put emphasis onto your CV. So marketing yourself on paper is probably one of the hardest things you have to do, because the person hasn't met you. You have to somehow get across who you are and your personality on 2 bits of paper. And that is very difficult. And in some respects, it might be why volunteering is a very good idea, because if the employers already met you and you've worked with them and so on, then they know that you're a good person, you fit in, you work hard. I mean, why take the risk of a complete stranger? You know, they might be taking a bit of a punt with that person. So even though they're required by law to advertise the job, you may find that you've been in this situation, or you may find yourself in this situation in the future when you go for a job and you feel like, you know, this is a stitch-up. They've got somebody already lined up. We're just going through the motions. But really, you know, you want to be that person, you know, who's the stitch-up person who's already lined up for the job. The interview is a very it's a very weak method for really finding out whether someone's suited to the job, because if someone puts on a great performance, you still might end up with someone who's not going to fit in. So getting this across on paper, it's really a bit like doing an exam. If you're asked a question in an exam, you need to answer that question. That question could be worded quite differently to that answer could be worded quite differently to a different question. Even if the question changes very subtly, you may have just one or two words change, and the emphasis of your answer to that exam changes again. So really, you know, whatever the job, I think you can never say, I have a CV. This is my CV. You might have a format, a template of a CV with all your information in it. From that, you then move things around and you tweak things. Okay, so you need to identify these employer needs. So when we looked at those previous, when we looked at those job descriptions, you could see, you could highlight the key things that the employer is looking for. And in some cases, they'll even tell you what is the essential and what are the desirable requirements of the job. So if you highlight those and make sure you get those into your CV, you're halfway home. You need to give evidence, okay? And this is really important, and this is where getting experience is really crucial while you're doing your degree. You know, if you find yourself a graduate with a degree and nothing else, no added value, nothing else to back it up, then you might find you've got to start volunteering when you leave university and do a gap year before you can actually come at the stage, before you can get to the stage where you can start applying for jobs paid jobs. And I know that seems unfair, but there are so many graduates now. You know, the goalposts have changed. When you think back 30 years, there are as many people doing A-levels that were doing a degree. So, you know, there are so many more of you now. So you have to add value. And if you don't do it during your degree, then you have to just, you know, accept that you will probably have to do another course, maybe do a master's or do a technical specialist course, or maybe do some voluntary work in order to bring yourself up to that level. So the more you can do while you're a student, you know, you're getting your loans and you're getting you're in the university, you can use that time as productively as possible. So you need to give evidence, and you need to show what your relevance of your skills and your qualities. And present a professional image, obviously, and again, conveying enthusiasm and commitment. People say, oh, I feel like a bit of a freak, you know, I feel like I'm boasting, and oh, you know, it feels uncomfortable to be promoting myself like this, you know. But the problem is, if you play yourself down, like you would do maybe if you're talking to people, and you all tend to be a bit self-effacing because you don't want to, you know, you don't want to sound too big-headed. But on paper, if you play things down, it makes you look half-hearted, it makes you look wishy-washy and like you don't really have much self-respect. And it's amazing how when you write something on paper and a stranger reads it, how different it is when you say it to a friend. So don't worry about selling yourself on paper. Don't worry about bigging yourself up. It just makes you look enthusiastic. It makes you look enthusiastic and committed. And that's what employers want to see. So, the perfect CV is concise. It's not your life history, any more than if you write an exam, you answer an exam question, you don't just write down everything you know about that subject. You're targeted and you put in key information that you know is going to score you marks. And you communicate and demonstrate and you produce results. And those results are usually an interview. That's what a CV is there for. It's to get you to an interview. It's usually just a stepping stone. There's very few employers that would take you just on your CV. So they want to be motivated to meet you and actually really feel strongly positive about you being a potential candidate for the job. So it's like your personal prospectus. In the same way that the employer doesn't write into their job description all the bad things, oh, it's going to be really boring at times, and well, you know, you're going to have to work late most times and so on. You tend to big up the good things. So you big up the good things about yourself and don't dwell on anything negative. It won't get you to the job, but it'll help you get into the interview. How long do you think the employer will spend reading your CV? Any others? 30 seconds. People agree with that?
I think it could be less.
10 seconds. Longer? Shorter? They tend to skim it first. So I would say 20 to 30 seconds. So, I mean, 10 seconds, yeah, could be, because if they've got 100 to get through, they may just be looking to see, you know, have you got a degree in ecology, or have you got any particular thing on the screen out to begin with, and then they'll whittle it down a bit more and a bit more. If you think if someone spends 30 seconds, you know, with 100 CVs, that's 50 minutes. You know, and that's nearly an hour just spent looking through all these CVs, and people get fatigued as well doing it. So if they can just see immediately what they need, then hopefully, you know, your CV will go on the yes pile, and then keep staying on it right the way through. Because ordinarily, employers, I mean, it does vary, but I think employers invariably only take out 8 to 10 people for interview, possibly over 1 or 2 days. So, you know, from 100, they have to get that down. But it depends on the job, and it depends how specialised it is, and where they've advertised it as well, because a lot of the time, if they have to advertise, they'll do it, but they'll put it in a sort of obscurish place, so that not many people will see it, or perhaps only those people who are in the British Ecological Society will see it, for example. So, you know, or people who are using Twitter. So it depends, you know, the wider range of resources that you have to look for jobs, the more chance you've got of minesweeping and finding where they are. And that gives you an advantage. I mean, you already have an advantage because you're here today at this event. And you're taking advantage. You know, think how many ecology undergraduates there are in the UK. And, you know, you're a tiny, tiny little minority of people here today. So that gives you an immediate advantage over all those other people. So, you should be doing all right for yourself. So just to reiterate, employers want targeted applications. So you need to be well aware of these skills that they're looking for, and you need to match your evidence to them. And explain your interest and motivation in them. So you want to show that you know about them as well. So that's important, that you research them. And it's so much easier to do it these days with the internet. Everybody's got an internet presence. And I would say that one of the useful things about LinkedIn, which wasn't mentioned earlier, is actually you can research consultancies and people like that on LinkedIn. You know, you might find them there. You can do a search on, you know, just doing search environmental consultancy, and loads of these companies will pop up. So it's a great way to do speculative applications, or maybe even look at the people that are in those jobs and seeing what their background is and seeing how they got into the job, and then even maybe contacting them. So there are various ways that you can find out about different companies. And of course, if you're after a research group, I mean, that's really easy because every university professor has a research group. And if you're targeting a particular research group to apply for a PhD, you basically can go and look at their publications even, because you're basically a university. You're very lucky you have access to the university library, which subscribes to a whole load of journals, which aren't on open access mainly, so you wouldn't be able to access them if you weren't in the university. And go and look at their latest research papers, and write to them saying, oh, I've read your research paper, I see that you're doing such and such work, and I'm very interested in that. And they'll be immediately impressed by the fact that you've gone to read their paper. So there are various little ways in which you can find out about your potential employer, depending on who it is. You know, make sure that your applications are made in the way that they ask you. So if they ask for an online application plus CV plus covering letter, don't just send your CV and covering letter and don't bother filling in the application form. You have to do what they tell you. It's like following exam rules again. They're in charge. You know, and if you can add to their requirements, so they'll have a set of specifications that they'll want from you. If you can add anything on top of that that makes you stand out, so you're actually enhancing that, then again you will hopefully get the edge on other people and your competitors. Because actually I think there are quite a lot of jobs around for ecologists. I mean, compared to people who want to go and do lab work, for example, there seem to be a lot of entry-level ecology jobs. Getting on is another matter, but hopefully I'll be able to show you on your resources list lots of places that you can look for jobs in ecology. You know, we're not talking about great salaries here or anything, but it's a foot in the door, and once you get that foot in the door, then it's up to you then to make money. So the kind of ways in which you can really boost yourself is using these kind of action words. So you really promote yourself as a, you know, action person. So I've already asked you who's actually got a CV. How long does it take to write your CV? As long as a piece of string, yeah, as long as you like. You keep on tweaking it, perfecting it. So it actually takes a lot longer than you think it's going to. So, you know, for example, today you might have come across somebody and been inspired by their talk, and they may have said to you, oh, well, send me your CV and let's discuss this opportunity. And what if you haven't got a CV and you're going to rush home and quickly rush one out, and it's not necessarily your best CV? So I think, you know, one of the things I would say, you know, if you were thinking, what can I do that's going to be useful after this day, will be to really make sure that you've got a CV, that you can at least have the basic information set out so that you can change it. But it can take quite a long time to do it. And it's easy to forget things as well, things that you've done in the past that just pop into your head when you just sent it off. So when you're preparing your CV, you always need to put your strongest statement at the top, and that depends on the job that you're applying for, so that changes. And you need to keep things succinct. People don't want to read reams of information. You know, you can use formatting, underlining, bulleting, don't overdo it. Use simple terms. Use quantities and amounts. So if you were part of a team, say I was part of a team of 8, we went out for 4 days and we surveyed this species or whatever, and this is what we did. You know, it really brings it to life and makes it a real life piece of evidence that it's very likely that if you do get to interview, you will then be asked to expand on that bit and tell them about it, and they'll be really interested. So try and bring things to life, and and use all sorts of different evidence. Because if you're in societies at the university, they don't necessarily have to be ecology related. So if you've organised an event or been part of anything that you're interested in, it's all going to count at this level for you. Because you have got limited experience. You're only at a certain stage in your career. People aren't expecting you to have gone to the moon. You're very much at a certain level that they would expect you to have done extra, done more than your degree, but not done huge amounts. But they want to see that you've got potential. So these are my top 5 CV mistakes, and actually there's 2 in the first one. So I thought top 5 sounded better than top 6. So I've seen so many CVs that are too long. I don't see that many that are too short, but I do see some that are too long. What do people think would be the ideal length for a CV? 2 pages? Yep, I would agree with that. So we call it a CV in the UK and in other countries in the EU. In America they call it a resume, and in other countries in the EU they call it a resume as well. So it can be confusing sometimes. You think, oh, am I supposed to send one side or 2 sides? So I would say on average you should send 2. In places like France, they used to only take 1-page CVs, but they seem to have changed that now because we've become part of the EU. And has anyone seen the CV, the Europass? It tells you how to write a CV, sort of instructions, and they're very much based on the kind of way we CV. So unless specified, write 2 sides, otherwise you'll be selling yourself too short. But only write 1 page if they ask for it. It would be very difficult to get all your skills and all the extra information into a 1-page CV. So if it's disorganised and difficult to follow, so you start with one date and then you're going reverse chronological, then you're going forward chronological, and you're mixing up education and work experience, then the employer will just get confused and probably just throw you out because you haven't got the time of day to bother. If it's untargeted and generic, again, it really shows. And those CV wizards that you see on Microsoft and so on, they spot those a mile off. Because they usually are used to having CVs being sent through to them, and if they see it in the same format over and over, they think, this person isn't really working hard for themselves. So I would say you know best how to set your information out, so do it your way, don't be using these wizards. And there's no excuse for misspellings, right? So just check it and then get a friend to check it with someone else, because sometimes you don't see your own errors. And then don't put in irrelevant information. There might be stuff in there that isn't directly relevant to the job, and you can make it into a small section. But if you're putting in too much and highlighting it and so on, they'll wonder why, what are you doing applying for this job? It doesn't seem as if you're really relevant to it. Okay, so they're just general mistakes that people can make. And I have to say that, I have seen bad CVs, but I'm never overly critical, because I have to say my CV when I left university was dire. It was really awful. And I think the big problem is that you see CV, example CVs on the internet, and you see tutorials maybe of how to write a CV. But I think, when it's not directed to your own discipline, when you feel that it's not really relevant to you, it's actually quite hard to follow. Which is why it's been quite good today to be able to do this workshop for you guys in discipline-specific CVs that I can give you, because it actually helps to be able to show you how you can set out your particular information. So, I must admit there isn't a huge amount of help out there for your area. More aimed at general management, I would say. So there are these different types of CV. So what I want you to do is just have a look in your packs, and you'll see that I've got an academic CV of this person called James Fields. He's based at Lancaster University, but only because that's where I'm based. It's a completely made-up person. So one is an academic and one is targeted. And you might think when you first look at it, well, they look very, very similar. And actually they do. Because they're both ecology related. One is for an ecology PhD and one is for an ecology job. But that subtle shade could make all the difference. So let me just first tell you what these three types of CV are. So if you look at this, well, if you look at both CVs, they are chronological, as in they're in reverse chronological order. So I would say always start with what you're doing now. So even when you graduated, and if you're doing a job volunteering, you might want to start with your work experience first on the top of your CV and then follow through with your education. But whatever you do within that section, you want to keep it in chronological order. If there's something a bit erratic that's in there, some course you did or something you did that doesn't quite fit in, you can always subsection your main sections. So you could have ecology related, you have education ecology related, and then you have education other. And then you can then take it out of its chronological order, stick it in its own section. You have to keep it consistent and logical. And the chronological CV is very much a good starting point. So if you haven't done your CV yet, just wallop everything down on paper. Try and put it in chronological order. So you've got all the education you've done, any volunteering, and it's all there for you. And then you can pull the bits out that you need. So it's quite good if you want to show that you're established. So if you were applying for a PhD, you quite happily put everything in chronological order, in reverse chronological order, and that would be fine. Now, although I've told you that I've given you a targeted CV, I would say that actually both of these are targeted. One's targeted for academic job, and one's targeted for an ecology job. And this is the most common type of CV that really you should be using. So you're going to organise the information into sections that are relevant to the job. Okay, so you're going to, so here you're focusing on this specific job and you're showing your appropriate capabilities. So if you look at the academic CV, you'll see you've got ecology and academic related experience. And you've got all these various courses and experience, and it's all together in one section. And you've got the e-mentoring in there as well, because that's relevant to academia. That's relevant because you're in a university and you could be mentoring students. And if you look at the targeted CV, which is aimed at an ecology job, you'll see that the e-mentoring has been taken out and it's been put into additional skills because it's not directly relevant. E-mentoring isn't really something that's relevant to this ecology job. So there's very subtle differences there. The skills CV is if you want to come out of ecology and do something completely different. So if you were applying for that European civil service job, for example, where they're only after your skills, what you would do is a bit like on page 2 of the targeted CV, where it says interpersonal. You've got things like well-developed team working skills through my involvement in fieldwork and voluntary schemes where agreeing tasks and working in cooperation is central to doing a professional and efficient job. Okay, what you would do is take this section and expand it so it just covers the whole front of the CV. So you would take all your ecology, acts, fieldwork, whatever, and you would incorporate that into an interpersonal skills section where you can give evidence of organisational skills, communication, team working, and you can bullet point, say, 3 bits of evidence for each one. Okay, I haven't given you the skills CV because I didn't have time to mock one up, but I might do one. I've actually put these CVs up on my blog, so if I do a skills one as well, I'll let the ecologist let you know, and you can go and have a look at it. So what do you actually include on your CV? So your personal details, obviously. And now, more and more, people are putting in their social media, their blog, their Twitter, they're on LinkedIn. The thing you must make sure, I mean, how many people here are on Facebook? Right, how many people are on Facebook for professional purposes? Okay, and that's usually the way. How many people are using social media for professional reasons, for Twitter, for LinkedIn? Yeah, so people have been tweeting today, or they've got a LinkedIn account. They're your more professional social media. I would definitely reiterate what Tom said and really start thinking about getting on that. It's a bit like saying 30 years ago, I can't remember with email, you had to do it. And now really, social media is an extension of that. You do see jobs coming up on Twitter, and there's a lot of chit-chat going on. It is a quite useful medium. But that's an aside. Do you put in a career goal or your key capabilities, I call them as well? So a lot of people put a career goal, don't they? Or they put a personal profile. Enthusiastic graduate with so much experience. Unless they are really targeted and really well thought through and specific, don't bother with them because they look very superficial. I'll just talk about that in a minute. Education, work history, skills, professional memberships and interests and referees. So your personal details, as I've shown here. So there you go, you've got your email, mobile, don't be putting term time address, home number, mobile, it's just too confusing. Just think, well, what are my contact details, and just stick with one so the employer doesn't get all confused about where you are. And then with this career goal and key capabilities. So it's got to be really, really, really specific. So if they are particularly interested in, say, bat ecology, and you have been doing lots of bat work and you are an expert in bats, then you could put that right at the top in your key capabilities, so that if they are only spending 10 seconds whizzing through, because they've got so many applicants, they see the word bat right in the first line, and you're in there, you're on the top pile of the yes, you're on the yes pile, because you don't want it halfway down the page and you have to find it in amongst some other information. And so unless you've actually got that, and you look at the requirements, then really I would say don't bother. So I've put an example here: ecology graduate with experience conducting bat surveys, coupled with excellent fieldwork techniques, well-developed team working, communication skills, and strong desire to forge a career as an ecologist. So this is the most important bit. This bit will be for that job that I was just mentioning. So education, so as I've shown you, so for the targeted ecology job, you don't necessarily have to go into a lot of details about your dissertation. You can be more general about it, more talking about, you did data collection, you did analysis, you produced a report, you were researching 2 extended essays, and there's your school. But if you're going for a PhD, the academics, the professors, are much more keyed into education, because that's all they've ever done in their lives. They've only ever been in a university. So they're very keyed into qualifications. So you would put much more emphasis on your degree if you're going for a PhD. So you might even put in your main subject study, because they might be quite interested in that. And then you could actually put the title of your dissertation and the title of your extended essays, so because they'll be interested in that, and they'll want to see that. But the ecology job, that wouldn't necessarily be something that would be top of their agenda. They're more interested in the skills and techniques you've got. But then when you look at work history, again, from the academic one, I put in 3 bits of information there. Yeah, so you can, if you've done volunteering, and I said you've got to be consistent. So if you say had a bar job in amongst all that, or you did some job in a shop, you don't necessarily want to break up all this lovely ecology experience by putting in, that you work for Boots or something. Even though that's still useful, what you can do is separate it out where you've got ecology-related experience and keep all that together. And then you can have other work experience. And then that's further down, it might be on the second page because it's not as important. So, you can just stick these other things in because they are still evidence. You're a motivated person who gets involved, you don't just sit around all day doing nothing, you're proactive. These things show good communication skills and so on. But you can separate them out so it makes your CV look more consolidated. So your skills, again, this comes off the targeted CV. So you've got the ecology together, you've got the IT and the clean driving licence, and then you can put in some interpersonal skills as well, which shows that you're going to fit in and people are going to get on with you and you're going to be a team player. And so they are important, but they're not maybe as important as the ecology skills. They'll be number 1. And then if you've got the team working as well and communication, then that's an added bonus. And then referees. Okay, so I've got 3 here. Normally you only have to put in 2. So which ones do you choose? So if you're academic CV, you can have your course tutor and maybe your project tutor, who will be able to give different perspectives of you. If you're going for an ecology job, you might want to use one of the people that you volunteered with. So you could maybe cut out one of these academic people and replace them with the back group person. Or if they want 3 referees, you can use all 3. So think about who knows you best. You don't have to use your head of department or whoever. If you can find a tutor who knows you better and can vouch for your skills and your field work or something, then do use them. And do send them your CV and say, this is what I'm planning to do, because then they can write a good targeted reference for you, because that's their job, is to pick you up and show the employer how great you are. So we're whizzing through this. I can see I've only got about 5 minutes left now. So writing your covering letter is the icing on the cake. So I've given you an example. It's quite general. It's an ecology job, and it just gives you a kind of format that you would work from. So you would normally put the name of the addressee. So sometimes you don't have them, let's say, dear sir or madam. In which case you say your faithful. If it's dear person, then you say your sincerely. Even if you're writing, and lots of people apply online on email, do still send a covering letter. And you don't know which one they're going to read first, whether it be your CV or your covering letter. So it doesn't matter if you reiterate what's in your CV, because this is to make them want to read your CV. CV is to get to interview. So you need to reiterate, a bit like with the key capabilities, you need to reiterate key things in your CV that stand out and are going to really make them want to look at you in more detail, because you're highlighting the key points and you're being very positive at the end. I hope you'll consider me seriously as a candidate for interview and look forward to hearing from you. Okay, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Again, that sounds really too forceful, but actually on paper it just sounds like you're very enthusiastic about this post. Okay, so actions. Research the job market. Even though you might only have been in your second year at the moment, it's good to get to grips with the job market. It's a bit like, where you're researching your ecology for your degree. You're becoming aware of the different research that's going on, you're getting aware of the field that you're in. Well, the job market kind of goes hand in hand with that, because that's where you're going to be at the end. It's a bit like when you applied for university. You didn't wait until you got your A-levels before you actually started researching the university. You were doing it a year before. So it doesn't hurt to start perusing the job market. And, you know, if you do see jobs that interest you, you might want to just find a little file and just keep sticking them in there, because although those jobs won't be available when you graduate, you'll have a whole host of information, contacts and so on that might be quite useful for you if you want to write speculatively, for example. So get your CV outline written. If you can do the reverse chronological, just get your information down. Then maybe go and use your career service to get it checked. But that's just for a general CV. Obviously, it's not until you apply. I mean, if anyone ever says to me, you know, can you check my CV? I'm applying for a job. I always get them to send me the job spec as well, because I can't tell if the CV is doing its job unless I see what they're applying for. So, has anyone got any questions? Things that I haven't covered? Right.
On the CV and the references, is there right to put references available?
Yes, yeah, you can. Yes. Yes, you can put references available on request if you want to. And if you're short of space, it's a great way of doing that. If you're going for a PhD though, and you've got a supervisor who may be well known and known to the person you're applying for in the research field, because everyone knows each other, it can help if you sort of name dropping in your reference. Yeah, I would definitely, that's a really good question. So if you're sending your CV by email, I would attach the email as a Word document or a PDF and your covering letter as well, so they print out to both. Because actually, you know, when you get when you get an email and it's in the body of the email, you don't always print it out, and then when it does print out, it's not necessarily in a great format. What you can do though, when you write your email, is say, dear so-and-so, I'm responding to the job advert, I attach my CV, in which you will see that I have got great experience in fact surveys and I really am very interested in this job. So don't just say, dear so-and-so, see attached my CV, because it sounds a bit sort of arrogant in a way. So just reiterate. It doesn't matter if you keep reiterating, it's not a problem. It doesn't, you know, on paper again, on email, it's not, it doesn't sound repetitive. Thank you.
So, as your experience actually does, like as you start accumulating experiences, and then you're forced to write a single-page CV, which ones do you first start eroding from it?
I think if you have to write a one-page CV, what happens is you end up taking out the extra added skills and the embellishments that you've used. So you may not put in the specifics of the. So you might have an example, but you'll just put that survey, you know, and the date. But you wouldn't say anything more about it. But they would know that you've done that. Yeah. So you would take bits out strategically, but you try and keep the skeleton intact.
Hi. What happens when you're not applying for a job, but you want to just get in touch with someone to ask about maybe an available position that is not advertised? How do you go along about that? You send a CV, you send an email?
Yeah, I would send your CV because again, it's like your calling card, and you can say, you can see from my CV attached that I'm currently a student at such and such a university, and I'm aiming to do such and such. And that might only be a one-page CV, because if it's very targeted at this person and you don't really need to embellish it because there's not a job being advertised, you might just want to put some key things in there, and then it will put your contacts in, and if you've got a LinkedIn account, whatever, then yes, I would do it like that. Yeah.
Regarding references, in other CV workshops I've been to before, they suggest that you have an academic reference,
Yes.
And then a professional one.
Mm-hmm.
For myself anyway, since joining the university, I haven't been working, but I'm not necessarily in contact with people I was working with before. What would you suggest is the best thing to do?
think it's useful to use a reference with somebody who you feel knows you and can vouch for your recent activity. So, I mean, not everybody will have a work reference, but what you need to do is focus on people who will be able to give a different perspective of you. And that's why, in a way, I put down the course tutor and the project field tutor, who would give one aspect would be more your academic, degree experience, and then the other one will be talking about how you work and apply your knowledge. So if you do have to fall back on your two academics references, and that's the best you can do, then that's fine. But just try and find differing perspectives. Hi.
Just two questions actually. For the covering letter, how long do you think it should be? So how long, if it's, say, for example, a speculative application, you're not really expecting it to be able to look through your coverage rights for these applications. So I'm kind of worried about making it too long, or something like trying to get everything in there. So is this like quite a good length, or can you make it a bit longer than that?
I would make it a bit shorter if it's speculative, because they're in the middle of doing something and you're interrupting them, so they're not expecting you. So I would cut to the chase, very, very quickly, and even make it shorter than that. But I wouldn't make a covering letter should only really be that long. You might have to write a personal statement, say, for example, if you're applying for a research job, when you set out your research interests, and that would be an additional document that you would supply. But the covering letter is this letter of introduction, that's all it is, and it should be short and sweet.
And so my other question was just, obviously, like, a lot of us don't have that much time to do applications or trying to get a degree rather than obviously it's prioritising. How long, if you found a job you want to do, how long do you think you should spend on like modifying the CV and targeting it for that job? It can be like really, really time-consuming. I don't really know what sort of, like, you can spend so much time on something and you're not really gaining much more. How long do you think it normally takes to take it?
I think if you set yourself a time in the day, it's almost like you timetable it in. So when you timetable, I'm going to do supervision tonight, I'm going to write this essay, and I'm going to spend half an hour. Just give yourself half an hour to do it. Actually, you might be watching Coronation Street, but do that instead, So I think if you set yourself an actual amount of time, then that will help. But I know what you mean, because somebody said over here, how long does it take, how long is a piece of string? And you can find yourself going over it again and again and again, and spending a lot of time, almost like displacement activities, when you should be writing an essay. So yeah, you need to balance.
If you're applying for a job and your A-levels are really rubbish, can you leave out the grade and just put down the
Yeah. The good thing about the CV is you can just do whatever you want. It's under your control. So if you don't want to put in your A-level grades, then don't put them in. If you think it's going to put the employer off. I mean, they may ask you about it in an interview, and then you have to be ready with a positive answer. And that's where, getting some interview practice and some interview tips. Yeah, don't dwell on the negative. I know people sort of say, oh, well, one of my A-levels wasn't very good. You can kind of mention it in the covering letter. You think, no, don't dwell on the negative. You don't need to do that. Let's just positive thinking. And then if it gets brought up, be ready with a good, positive answer.
I just wondered if you had an opinion as to a photo on it or not, because
In the UK, we don't tend to use a photo. They don't need it, they don't have to have it. And if you were applying to Germany or France, they tend to ask for a photo. I wouldn't bother. The trouble is, employers tend to photocopy them and then they don't when they photocopy you. So I think, unless they ask for it, I would. Okay, right. Well, look, I've given you these resources. They're not just about CVs. I just want to draw attention to the ecology-specific sectors. There's 2, 4, 6, 7 links here specifically for ecology jobs. Okay, so they're worth looking at and keeping an eye on. The IEM is great. You've seen them here, but they're so great for short courses. If you think you've got some skill gaps, things like identification skills are such a shortage skill now. All the old guys, all the old professors are retiring and dying off and there's nobody coming through to replace them. So if you've got those skills, then you'll be sought after. And same with things like bioinformatics, statistics, anything biomathematical, data modelling, analysis. They're really shortage skills at the moment. So, you know, if you've got those, you're well ahead of the game. And then I've got some Twitter accounts and blogs, and then some books. And I just plug my book. It's not aimed at ecologists per se, but it has got interview tips and CV tips and so on in it. If you're interested in that. But I've got that on my list. And that's my blog. And if you have a look at CVs, you'll see that those CVs that I've given you today are in there along with the covering letter, and I will try and add the skills CV onto it. So I'll end with a nice picture of the Lake District.